Hi, it's 9/11 of 2024, and I'm not really sure how long this video will go. This is why usually I have my hands and I'm like holding the camera, but in this case I made a little tripod using my phone case, so that's what the phone is standing on right now. And naturally, I'm going to talk about the thing that everyone's been talking about for the last almost 24 hours now, which is the Charlie Kirk murder. There's a little weird sunlight camera thing. I'm not sure if I understand how that works. Anyway, there's a lot of thoughts that went through my head about it, because I basically heard about it like 10 minutes after it happened. I was just there. I think I just got home, and there was no real escape for seeing, unfortunately, all the footage, which of course one thought that I did go through was that about the footage itself. It's R-rated level gore. It's really bad. So, and I thought to myself, like, should I encourage people to watch the footage? I mean, if it's still even out there, because they might have scrubbed it, and I wouldn't really blame them. They being like social media moderation. Jeez, the only problem with this tripod is that I'm in like a bad position for my neck. But I guess we'll have to make do, because I think it's important. Like, that's why I'm recording this, because I'm not really well enough practiced, really ready to have like a full podcast channel or anything like that. Most of my videos that I've practiced making, wow, that was a really big bumblebee up there, they were like 10 minutes at most, and this I don't know how long this will go. I'm praying for my phone's memory, but I think it'll be okay. But anyway, sorry for beating around the bush here, but there's a lot of bushes we might need to beat around today. So I thought about the release of the footage, and on the one hand, it's just horrific. There's really no doubt about it. It honestly makes that the poor Ukrainian girl, I want to say her name was Irina, but I don't want to say that wrong. So, whoops, too late. But compared to that uncensored video, this was a lot worse. It was much worse. And on the one hand, it's not exactly, it's not good for people in our society to be exposed to that level of kind of traumatizing imagery, especially about someone they've likely seen a lot. Like, today I just watched Charlie's own commentary on the South Park episode that came out about him, which of course they took down immediately. But not Charlie, the South Park episode. But it's, on the one hand, it's pretty traumatizing, and that's damaging to people to see something like that. And I don't like that idea inherently. But on the other hand, there is something educational about seeing, like, especially with the fact that it was the girl and now it's him, and they were kind of in close proximity time-wise. Like seeing the spilled blood, it sucks, but I think there's some educational value, because in our society, we're often conditioned to feel very safe. Forget the fact that crime is just a lot lower than it was in previous eras, and bad things don't happen nearly as much, especially to people as young. Children used to just kind of die of all kinds of plagues back in the day. Back in the good old days that were way before me. But if you're never exposed to the actual violence itself, which our society goes to great lengths to prevent, like most videos, like even the Ukrainian girl, the first video actually didn't show the stabbing at all. And the second video blurred it out. And probably the only reason I ended up seeing the uncensored Charlie Kirk one was because it was not, because it was like raw, it was live. People were just throwing it up. So there was no time for moderation to take it down. And by seeing things like that, I think, I hope that us in our society can get a grasp of the consequences of their actions, of, well, not just their actions, but of the world. Like, you can't just go around and make a bunch of mistakes and run aimlessly and expect nothing bad to happen from it. Bad things do happen, and that's just the way it is. It's the way it's always been. But our society likes to shield us from it. And while that comes from, I think, a noble place, it prevents us from getting the proper perspective, and therefore it makes us more vulnerable to being careless about the things that we do, the things that we say. So that would be the first of many thoughts. Actually, well, I'm going to go towards that deep breath I just took, because I think that is probably the most important lesson that I could take from all this, is that when bad things happen, it's extraordinarily important to not jump to conclusions. And I know it's a very difficult thing to do. I myself, actually, in this case, I was middle of the road. I didn't jump to every conclusion, but I jumped to conclusions. I did it. I was kind of shocked and appalled, and I jumped to all the conclusions. The Ukrainian girl's murder already had me riled up for it, and I was just ready to go. So it just happened, and there's not really any going back from that. But it's not like I said anything that atrocious that no one was saying before. It was just, oh God, it's really annoying. This bench. Let's see if I do this. Okay, that's a little better. It's a little better for the neck. Okay, that's way too close. But basically, in the moment, and really in at least a day following something really bad happening, because this was a really bad thing happening, or at the very least, if you were disagreed with him and you thought it was maybe a good thing, it was a really shocking and possibly narrative changing thing that had a lot of emotional investment for everyone. So I think it's quite prudent. Dang. Yeah, the neck's just gonna hurt. There's no getting around it. Oh well, yeah. This is important. That's why I'm recording this, despite being outside in a random park. But to take a deep breath from these things after they happen, and I'm not talking about for a minute. I mean at least for me, the first day that any bad thing happens, it's all raw and it's there, and it's very hard to separate your logical thinking. As I think his name Andrew Bustamante or something has a channel on YouTube about CIA stuff, and one thing he was saying was about people's anxiety and reactions, and how they look for anxious people because your emotions and your instincts respond immediately to things, and it takes a while for your logic to catch up. And that I think that really applies here, but it's hard to recognize that it does, because you don't really, it's not like I felt like I was in danger, I was just sitting in my living room. But that first day, really the first 2 days, and this is the second day, I still feel kind of raw about it. Yesterday, I was actually blinking, trying to think maybe I was just in a dream or something. And it doesn't seem that I am. I'm still not going to confirm that I'm not, but I don't think that I'm in a dream. But there's just such a visceral shock around the whole thing that it's hard to think straight. At first, that's tricky. I'm trying to think about what I was at first. It feels like such a long time ago now. At first, my instinct was to say, well, the left wants us dead. And they're violent demons and yada, yada, yada. And there's probably some truth to that, if we're being honest. I mean, I've met quite a few leftists who by their demeanor, it was quite evident that they did wish harm on me. And it's not like I actually did damage to anyone. I just like did basic debates and a lot. But sorry for these pauses. I'm trying to there's 5 different topics I want to get in here, and again, still a little raw, so it's hard to organize my thoughts, and I'm trying to keep my neck straight, which is not working. Maybe I'll pick up the phone in a bit, but okay, let's see. Got to think it through for a second, but to take the proper amount of time until really, I think in 2 days, I will wake up in the morning and the visceral feelings will be gone. I will still, mourn him, obviously, and I'll still feel a little dismayed. But the sort of forceful feelings that I think I get, and I think a lot of people get, the immediate, the feelings that just, it keeps pounding. It's just there, and it doesn't go away, and it kind of distracts you from other things. I'm considering getting a massage today just to, hopefully take my mind off of it a little bit. But to that extent, it's, but taking the proper time, once after those days, after I don't feel anything anymore, that's the time when you can start making actual decisions. Because this is a kind of event where nothing immediate is going to happen. The thing happened. There's no decision that you really need to make that's going to impact you in the next week. But, this may change things in the future. This may change things months from now, years from now, even decades from now. And that's the kind of thing, to think about those things properly, you need to be in your logical brain. And you can't do that if you're still being pounded by the emotion. So when it comes to defining your ideology, I think it's good to wait those days. And then afterward, then you can make a clear-headed statement. And I considered waiting to make this video until then. But I think it was important to discuss these feelings while they're fresh, and a lot of the topics while they're fresh, because what happens after a significant event, one good, so to speak, thing about being exposed to a tragic event at the moment. I was actually, I couldn't sleep one night years ago, and it was the night of that still kind of unknown Vegas shooting where 80 people died or something. And I was just awake, and I came downstairs, and I was just watching TV, and that came on, live coverage of that. And if I didn't see it live, if I didn't see things happen as they unfolded in the first few hours, I would have a lesser extent of knowledge about the issue. And I think that's because what happens after that is that the mainstream talking points wash over all the smaller immediate talking points, and just like with the Ukrainian girl, all that footage just starts to gets censored, it gets pushed back, and it's hard to get it's like when they say primary and secondary sources in history class. It's good to have the primary source when you're thinking about something important. So I wanted to make sure that was fresh on my mind when I was saying it. But I don't know how long this next topic, I guess I should, there we go. Just stretch for a second. Oh, God. Yeah, my neck does hurt me a little. It's a long story, but I've been working on that. Let's see if I can just keep my head back. There we go. That's not bad. A little bit energy consuming, but yeah, if I push my chest forward. Okay, enough. I don't want to bore you with that. Is that Charlie Kirk, to me, I wasn't much of a watcher of him. I had watched stuff that he's done. I guess my campus debate era was more in the Steven Crowder era that came before, and I must admit I found Steven Crowder a little more entertaining in the whole sphere. But Charlie Kirk, he was someone I was always aware of, And I actually went to, I think, one of his first conventions, one of his first TPUSA conventions. I think I was 16, so that was like 8 years ago. He must have been like 24 or something. That is kind of a crazy part of it. But that's sort of what I'm getting at, is that, you know, I sort of had proximity to him. I think I actually met him. I think I met him there, just for a second, one of those handshake picture things. But it was still, actually, I might have been to two. I might have been to two conventions like that, but enough, not important. Is that the age thing definitely got to me, because obviously me making this video is evidence that I have ambitions in the political commentary career, and the idea of being shot to death as I'm having a debate is not really comforting. So that definitely threw me into some extra turmoil about the whole thing. But I think it's the reasons this shooting are extra shocking. And I'm going to get back to the last thing, which is sort of a commentary on political violence itself. But anyway, here, okay, I'm going to pick up the phone for a few minutes. Let's see if this, wow, that was really shaky. I'm not sure if this helped, but we're going to go with it for like a minute and see what happens. So anyway, the reason this shooting was so shocking was, one, because of the optics of it. Obviously, a lot of people saw the video, and that was honestly rather traumatizing. Like, I'm not easily traumatized. I'm not easily pushed. I've definitely been through my events of that. Like, my parents didn't want me to watch Game of Thrones until I was like 15 or 16, and I found a way to watch it anyway when I was like 14. And some of like the Red Wedding, if you know about it, okay, I'm just shaking the screen too much. Some of that stuff was shaking for like a week. So this is like similar levels of trauma. Sorry, I just heard like a really long distance cough that sounded like it's coming through an air horn. Anyway, that was weird. But yeah, so like the spectacle. What the hell is that noise? Anyway, the spectacle of it was especially shocking to begin with, but also, as many people have pointed out, he's kind of a friendly guy. He's always been a friendly guy. He was literally on a campus doing a debate. And one could argue that he's like kind of antagonizing the students, and yes, he's smarter than them. And it is kind of a funny argument to make because he's not a college graduate. And as we know, if you don't graduate college, you're just an idiot. That's me. I'm an idiot. I didn't graduate college. You can stick that on a sticker, on a meme. And maybe I should do like more of a like the Roman thumbs down. I don't know. But it is kind of funny that you have the college kids running away from the high school graduate. And also, of course, they did not have to come out and engage. But the left often has a way of self-antagonizing. You know, they say, like, you can't be talking about this thing in front of us, and even though they could walk away. Like, you can walk away, but also you come to debate, and then you're horrified by the fact that someone is actually debating you. So I can see how the left is angry about what he does. It's still, I would not call that anything close to an excuse, but let's get to that later. So, like, the fact that he was doing something so innocuous. Like, if someone had shot Matt Walsh, who I'm a great fan of, I think he's hilarious and great, but he's a lot more radical than Charlie Kirk is. He's a lot more combative than Charlie Kirk is. Well, Charlie Kirk was. That's not going to get any easier to say. That's going to take a while. That's going to take like a year before it's even okay to like say and not sort of get the wash back. And like, he has a lot of stuff on YouTube too. It's like he was just making content a few days ago, even a day ago. Anyway, and that is also, I actually think that is also one thing that's shocking, is that this is a known figure. Not just someone like you kind of know, but like if you go on YouTube even right now, you'll just find his videos. from a week ago, a month ago, and he was just here. And he was just doing them, happy as ever, all great. And now he's gone. And what in the sewer smell is that? Anyway, lots of things trying to distract me today, including myself. But, yeah, so I think it's also shocking, perhaps, because it came after the Ukrainian girl. Like, that really, if you had seen the rhetoric online about that, on both sides, really, although there wasn't as much rhetoric on the left for kind of obvious reasons, mainly that it was completely indefensible. But, like, a lot of people on the right were already really angry. They were really put off by what happened to her. And I actually recorded a little video about that earlier, which maybe I'll post as well. But basically to say that us on the right side of the aisle, and I'd say I'm kind of on the right. I mean, sentimentally, I would say so. I'm certainly not into the kumbaya stuff of the left. But we were already kind of put off, and then this thing just happens. And it's just so sudden and shocking, and to someone that none of us, like, again, if you had shot Matt Walsh, I obviously would have been completely devastated. But I also would have been like, I can see why you didn't like him, at least. But Charlie Kirk, you really had to bend yourself into a pretzel to figure out why you didn't like him. Like, I guess you could say he was more effective than you would have liked, because he was effective. I mean, he made conventions. He made whole conventions for years. And I hope that it continues to be that way, and I think it will. And, God, where am I going with this? I guess it's just the overall shock that I wanted to convey. And okay, I have two more points, I think. One is on political violence itself, and the other is on, what is it? I'll get there. Okay, clearly I'm not going to get there. It's becoming evident to me that I'm not going to get there. So, for political violence itself, I think the thing that nearly everyone is missing is that a lot of people on the right and even in the center are saying stuff like excusing it at all is really bad. You know, and that no political violence should happen whatsoever, and it's always wrong. And political violence is bad. And what a lot of people on the left are saying is something like, yes, political violence is always wrong, but, you know, people are they're getting angry, and because they're getting angry, you know, you can't be so surprised when they do something. And this, to me, this really goes, as I've tweeted a few times now, this really goes straight to the original N-word issue, is that the left often thinks of the people who are in their vicinity and in the people they support are actual monkeys. They think they're actual monkeys, and they are excused in acting like monkeys. Because the idea behind the N-word one is that someone says the N-word, and then a black guy like beats them up or punches them or does anything that is really illegal to them. And then a lot of people on the left were like, and a lot of black people in this case would also say, oh, well, F around and find out, and got what you deserved. You shouldn't have gone messing around. It's like, you know, that's actually totally uncivil. It's totally uncivil. You know it's uncivil. And the idea of excusing it is itself uncivil. You're literally just promoting anarchy. You're promoting really animalistic behavior. And that it's kind of the same thing here. You know, because it's the same thing as the N-word stuff. Like, you know, well, if you say, wow. So, yeah, I'm sorry, just, wow. So I'm like sitting, and there's a golf course right there, and a ball just came and flopped into that field, into this park. That's kind of cool. Doubt he's getting that back. Anyway, is that the left is saying that Well, if you say stuff we disagree with, and of course we as the left will also say that what you're saying is damaging to people, is hurtful to people, is ruining people's lives, is taking away their rights, and therefore, well, you're hurting people with your words, so you shouldn't be so surprised. You shouldn't do that because bad things happen. They're saying that Charlie Kirk didn't have empathy, like he had some line about not having empathy, and that gun violence, of course the gun violence crowd, always the gun violence crowd comes out to completely miss the point of the debate for the 50 millionth time, and then they will go back into their turtle shells until another gun incident happens. A very irritating cycle. But then there's also the thing I think that also angered the right even more. Because let's be honest, there were people on the left, there were a lot of people on the left who said the right stuff. Whether they meant it or not is another story. But they came out and they mourned and they said it was terrible unequivocally. And that was probably the smart and right move. But then a lot of people on the left, and we can say, oh, but it's just a few people. No, it's not. I checked Blue Sky. I was on Twitter. I was on Twitter all day. I saw hundreds, thousands. They're out there. I saw the initial news coverage. There was plenty of, like half smiles over the whole thing. Like, oh, like you could tell. I was listening to Erin Burnett for a second at the start of her episode yesterday, and she was like, oh, Charlie Kirk was shot, and she was like giving the details in like a not disconcerted voice at all, which is okay. You don't have to be disconcerted. But then it was very evident with her tone that she was just waiting to say that but. And that, I think, really tipped the right off even more. Because what it is it's actually a threat. It's, if you say the wrong things, if you say things we disagree with, we have all kinds of crazy people who might just, murder you while you're talking. So you better fall in line. You better just do what you're told. We wouldn't want any, it's the classic, you have a nice shop here. Shame if something happened to it. Shame if it burned down. But you can pay us for protection. And the left's payment for protection is being a leftist, of course, or at least being a tacit supporter of the left. So I think it really was, it is a threat. And a lot of people on the left actually do mean us ill will. Some people on the right mean the left ill will, but it's kind of fundamentally not how the political ideologies work. Is that, the right is the side of conservation. Conservation can be conserving bad things too. But when you're on the side of conservation, hate is not the first instinct. Because your whole ideology is about keeping something, and you're not going to hate to keep it. You can hate things that come to destroy it, but it's a much less hateful ideology, so to speak. But the left, on the other hand, to be progressive, to be a change maker, to be all about change, is to say that, that the things as they are bad. So you already have impetus to hate the things the way they are. From what was it, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, where at the end they confront the High Evolutionary who created Rocket, and when Rocket beats him, he says that he just wanted to make everything better. And Rocket replied by saying that you didn't want to make things better, you just hated things the way they were. And that is a lot of what the left is. They just hate the things the way they are. And I want to get back to the hating things the way they are, because I think that's actually pretty important later. But what was that? But that whole sequence of events really riled up both sides. And I'm not a both-sider. I'm not going to say that. This is 85% the left's fault. It just is. Not every leftist, obviously, but it is. Dang. I actually don't remember where I was going with this point. I was really trying to stretch it out. I think I was trying to get something like in between before I go to the political violence itself, because the political violence point I'm going to make is going to be unpopular, almost certainly. It's really not going to be what you want to hear. But at the exact 30-minute mark, I think it's probably time to just go there. And I hope to finish that other thought later, and I hope it was enough for you to understand, to gain something from it. And the political violence point is that everyone says they are against political violence, and nearly no one is. You really aren't. You are against rebellious violence. Because if we think about what political violence is, it's violence to achieve a political goal. And politics is basically control over society and policy. And I'm sure there's a more fun definition out there. But, it's about the governance of the people and how our lives are run. By definition, that is violent. It doesn't have to be used violently. But, a lot of libertarians will say the government is a giant gun. And that is true. If you do not obey the dictates of the government, it will be violent towards you. Is that not political violence? I think it is. That is absolutely political violence. Now, what they will say is that, oh, no, that's not political violence. That's not violence at all. That's just policy. That's democracy. And we voted for it, and we have to obey the dictates of the vote. And that may be true, but it is still political violence. The two are inseparable, unless you have a government that is actually decapitative of its ability to force anyone to do anything. Then I guess you could say it's not political violence. But we don't have a government like that. So when a lot of people on the left, mostly, say something like, well, there's two. They'll either say about the Minnesota, this is going to be a slight tangent. They'll either say that there was a Minnesota state house member who apparently him and his wife, I think, were both murdered like a month ago. And literally no one ever heard of it. And only now, because of the Charlie Kirk thing, now everyone's coming out of the woodwork saying, oh, where were you during the horrific murder of these two people? That was political violence too. They're actually right that is political violence. However, it's just such a, I can't believe I'm not, it's such a straw man. It's such a straw man of it. It's not even remotely comparative. Because because the difference between the left and the right, I guess I was talking about left and right earlier. That's probably what I was going towards. They're disparate reactions. Is that when the right commits a crime, nearly everyone on the right will just, they will shame it unequivocally. On the left, that is really not true. It's not been true. It's literally never been true. But anyway, back to political violence itself, is that beyond just the you commit a crime and the government comes to arrest you, a lot of people on the left, I think they've been trying to say for a very long time that they feel oppressed. Now, let's be honest, half of it is bullshit. You're not oppressed because you're not making as much money as a guy 20 years your senior who actually has skills. You're not. That is not oppression. So half of it is the left misinterpreting nature for human oppression. But the other half is kind of true. Is that what they'll say is that essentially the system is failing us and our lives are miserable. I think that's a universal message from the left. The left is not a happy party for the most part, naturally, because they're all about progressing, changing. You don't change something that you're content with. As the old saying goes, that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Ooh, I see a cat. Anyway, I see a cat way over there. And I told that to my geometry teacher a long time ago when I was in high school, when he was rearranging the desks in the room, and then he just smiled weirdly as if he had been beaten the argument and proceeded to ignore the fact that I had completely beaten him in that argument. Hi, Hale. Anyway, to continue, is that political violence, people feel as if they are being acted upon. because violence is just an extension of force. If let's say a guy breaks into your house, technically they would define violence. Weird little bug. They would define violence by him actually shooting you. But what if he just points the gun at you? Is he being violent? He's threatening violence. But beneath every political dictate, beneath every status quo in a controlled society is political violence. So it's kind of the same thing. And I think a lot of people on the left feel that way. And a lot of young people in general. There's not a lot of young people who are happy with the way society is going. And again, half of that is because reality is a bitch. But the other half is because things have actually been done wrong. Things have actually been mismanaged, and a lot of the older generation have basically suicided our society. And people are really not happy with that. So when you say, we can't tolerate political violence at all, they actually are angered by that. They see that, and what they think is that, you're allowed to use the power of government to destroy everything we love. But the second we act against you, now you're clutching your pearls. And our society is very bad at acknowledging that argument. Not because it's something about we have to understand that people will behave animalistically, but that when you put people, not when they put themselves, when you put people in a situation where they have nothing to lose, and you give them, and you make yourself their enemy, you can expect that there will be some rebellion about that. And that's why it's important to actually make good political decisions that are prudent and not just pork. Pork being the legislative term for essentially political favors. Like a lot of bills, especially the bigger bills, just have most of it is just pork. It's just this congressman gets a bridge named after him built in Minnesota. I'm just using Minnesota as a random example here. Just the state that's been on our minds since the Ukrainian girl. So it's not a fun point to make, but the idea that political violence, and to that extent violence, because what you're taught in school is violence is never the answer. There's always a peaceful resolution. I'm doing that voice because I actually do think it is kind of worthy of mockery, because they will say that and then they will be violent towards you. Violent, I guess that's another thing, is that violence is defined differently by different people. Is that a lot of the older generation that's in power views violence as actual just unjustified force taking away what's theirs. And the younger generation views violence as being violated. Which, those words, there must be some teleology to those, if I'm saying that right. If I'm saying that word right either. Violation, violence. I can see that. But they take it much more as you are destroying the things that I love. That I take as an equivalent to being violently acted upon. And that's... Oh, crap. This guy's taking my golf ball. I was going to keep that golf ball. Anyway. And because the younger generation feels as if they are being acted upon in a way that will result in a bad outcome for them, they don't feel as bad about the traditional political violence. And, I hate to kind of speak similarly to the left, but if things aren't done, you can scream till the end of the day that political violence is never justified and we always need to be peaceful negotiating. But when you force and destroy all the methods of doing so, and then, of course, mock anyone who tries to come and argue about any of those things, you can expect that things will get worse. And eventually, as every single political revolution in history has happened, those cries of violence are never the answer are cold comfort when you're being shot in the head by a political revolutionary. And I don't want that to happen here, because a lot of people are already getting shot here, and we don't need more. And it would be, of course, really nice if everyone could just get along. But realistically, that's not practical at all. So, to give somewhat practical advice on what should be done about all this, you would have to, on the one hand, you could actually just roll back a lot of the left's policies that involve dangerous stuff, like bringing in all the immigrants and letting the criminals out of jail. That could be one thing. But the problem is that the leftists will just bring them back. And the damage really can't be undone. What are you going to do? Deport 20 million illegals? It's not going to happen. Or, more likely and possibly more healthy, is just self-segregation. And I know the left has made a ton of laws about not being able to do that. But essentially, you just live in the gated community. You just live in the town that all agrees with you. You live in the state, you live in the red or the blue state, and everyone just separates off from each other, and we kind of coexist in this sort of country. And that certainly leads to less violence, but it also might lead to good outcomes, because if people self-segregate in a way that's very hard to violate, like, redlining, it goes a little too far, and then you just get outrage and people doing stupid stuff around it. But if, the red people move to Florida and the blue people move to California, in the end, you might get an approximation of the original point of federalism, that each state is kind of its own laboratory of democracy, and we all get to decide how our societies are run. And therefore, in the end, there might be a peaceful resolution down the line. Of course, the issue is that still the federal policy churns on, making that less and less possible. But in terms of this specific issue, I think self-segregation is both possibly helpful and highly likely. Like, after you saw the Ukrainian girl getting stabbed in the subway, are you really going to go and sit with your back turned to a weird black guy in a hoodie in the middle of a subway with a bunch of other black people? And I have no beef with black people. I really don't. I would like to see them helped. I would like to see the victim culture undone. And I don't want to get too much into that because that would be kind of distracting at this point. But self-segregation is more likely now. And in political debates too. I think, as a lot of commentators are saying, we're going to have less debate after what happened to Charlie Kirk. So I don't really know where we go from here, and that is a common message, and I wish I could say something better. Maybe I'll have some amazing realization in a few days, but until then, we just have to see, and we just have to be careful out there, because things are currently not in a peaceful place, and it's unwise to think that they are and act as if they are. So we just have to be careful out there. And everyone has said their eulogies for Charlie Kirk. I wouldn't be the proper person to say much of a eulogy for him. I think he's made a big difference. By all accounts, he was a really amazing guy. I have a lot of respect for him because he was also not someone who went through the college system. But, I feel really bad for him. I'm guessing his death wasn't really painful, but it still doesn't take away from... He was 31, and he is a very young family, and they'll be scarred forever by this. And I think a lot of people on the right will also be scarred from it, partially because a lot of them actually knew him personally. We had a great loss today, and I think our society may one day look back on this and feel really sorry that this was allowed to happen, because it could lead to a lot worse results. At least, at most it could be something actually violent, and at least it could be just less civility. I think we already see that, because essentially he dies, the right is a little bit outraged by it, and then the left mixes mournful feelings and also not only outraged that that he had ever lived, but actual just glee that he died. So you kind of get that mix, and that just made the right even more mad, which just in the end made the left even more mad, because the left then feels like the right is going to crack down on them. And maybe there should be a bit of a crackdown, because left-wing political organizing has for a while been very okay with violence, and there's consequences as we've seen yesterday, and I hope it doesn't happen again. But we got to be realistic here, and we have to make the changes to take a bit of juice from the left to the right. We have to actually make changes to make sure bad things aren't happening, because they are happening, and you can't just hide under a rock. So that's why I made this video, and I hope it was, at the very least, informative of how I thought about things at this time. I mean, if it was educational, that would be good too. If it was inspiring, that would be even better. And best of all, if it made me look really cool, that would also be even better. But I'm not going to speculate on that further. I hope I release this video pretty soon. I want it to come out fresh when it's actually important. This is kind of an unnamed project that I have in terms of podcasting and possibly YouTubing, writing, and any of those things. So I guess this was good practice. I mean, my face doesn't hurt, actually, and I've talked for 46 minutes. Wow. I mean, I stalled a little bit too, but this was good. It was a good expression in a bad time. So I'll just leave you with that, and I'll leave myself with that, and we'll see in a few days how it all turns out. And I'd also like to note that apparently the shooter is still at large, and that does make me think that some of this could be like a little bit of a conspiracy. Like, really? He got away and he's still getting away? But we'll have to see. I don't think it's yet time to speculate on that, but I think there's a possibility, because it is suspicious timing. But anyway, I'll leave you with a little cliffhanger ending there. Farewell. See you next time.